Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. We don't sleep in the same room anymore and barely speak. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. How do you know when you're in an unhealthy relationship and it's time to walk away? Number 1. Commenter. I feel this is different for everyone, but for me, it was when I lost the will to bring up any of my own concerns or feelings because it wasn't worth the struggle. I just kept my mouth shut and dealt, because I hated the lengthy speeches and the way my ex would twist my thoughts and emotions around, which made me feel insane and doubt myself. In a nutshell, when I stopped advocating for myself in order to keep the peace, and when I was relieved to not be in the presence of my ex and actively avoided him, that's when I realized that the relationship had become far too unhealthy. Person B. I agree. I've had 2 relationships where I had to keep every concern to myself because if I spoke up I'd be called crazy, or worse, blatantly ignored. Luckily, being ignored gives you plenty of time to think and realize it's not worth the stress and anxiety of constantly doubting yourself. Number 2. Commenter. My first relationship. I let it go on for much longer than it should have. In hindsight, I think I knew at the 3-month point that this guy wasn't good for me, and I ignored my gut feelings to try and make it work for another 3 years. Once we were through our honeymoon phase of the relationship, he would randomly ignore me. At first it was a day or 2, then it became 3 to 4 days, and then it became a week or 2 and sometimes even longer. He would let his phone ring and ring and ring, and never answer my calls. He would pick up the phone if it was anybody other than me. I would bring it up with him and try to understand why he would do this kind of shit to me, and he never gave me an explanation. He flat out ignored me. He told me I was crazy and that he just needed space. Did I act like a crazy girlfriend? No, I don't think so, not until he would ignore me and the cycle would start over. I would try to address the issues, and any time I would try, he would shut me out until he got over it. We never fought. We never yelled at each other. He would just not answer my calls randomly. Mind you, the moment he ignored the first 2 calls, I wouldn't call him again until a week later. If he kept ignoring them, then I wouldn't call for another week. I felt trapped and alone. I couldn't understand why he would randomly choose to ignore me. After 3 years of no explanations and overall being ignored for anything and everything, I checked out of the relationship. If your current so ignores your concerns and ignores you in general, it's unhealthy. It destroyed my self-confidence and it made me never want to communicate any concerns with my future so's. If you feel trapped and that your partner isn't listening to you, please just leave. Person B. My situation is a lot like that. Any time that I voice any concern, even if it is something small, it's like he punishes me and will blatantly ignore me. Sometimes it goes on for full weeks, or more, and even if I ask him direct questions he refuses to say anything at all until he gets over it. I've never felt so alone and trapped than when he ignores me like this. Number 3. Commenter. When you stop being you, and start being the person your so wants you to be. Person B. Or when you sense you're trying to change you instead of helping you be the best version of the real you that you can be. Number 4. Well, a relationship doesn't need to get to the point where it is unhealthy for someone to want to leave, and be justified in doing so. I think what you're asking is, when is it just a rough patch any long-term relationship goes through, and when is it really a sign that things are over? I think when someone gets to the point when they are asking themselves this question, they need to reflect on the following points. How much of their desire to stay with this person is about A. Being afraid of being single and just getting into new habits, B. What other people would think if things break up, and C. Anxiety about the blowback from breaking up with that person, i.e. how angry/crazy/destructive that person will be to you or themselves. These are obviously not good reasons to stay, but I think they tip the balance for a lot of people to remain. After this, think about it the other way. What made you fall in love with this person and think you could have a life together? Are those characteristics, behaviors, lifestyles, and goals still there? If they still are in both of you, and you are not staying in the relationship for any of the bad reasons mentioned above, then I think the relationship really deserves the best try you've got to keep it going. Sometimes this means doing some hard work to get through the accumulated plaque of small resentments, disappointments, and miscommunications that build up over time. This is not easy, and it didn't happen overnight, so it will take a lot more than one talk, or even a few of them, to get through. But little that is worthwhile in this life comes easily. Number 5. Commenter. I was in a relationship where my so showed very little affection towards me. I thought that she was the most wonderful person in the world, but it was pretty clear that she didn't feel nearly the same way. I would always question whether she still loved me, especially when I wasn't with her. I would often confront her and she would deny it. I would convince myself that I was just being ridiculous. I guess the most unhealthy part of the relationship was that I was always questioning whether it was working out, and mentally, it was tearing me apart. Eventually, after about a month where we hardly had any contact, I decided to break it off and felt much better. Not knowing whether your so cares really sucks, and even having the knowledge that they stopped loving you is better than that. Person B. I went through this. Exactly. My ex-boyfriend didn't show me any affection. He barely talked to me, and if he did, it wasn't ever really about anything that regarded me. I was also sure we were constantly on the last leg of the relationship, and it ate away at my emotions until I just wasn't available to him anymore because of it. Number 6. The best way I can describe it is by adding together, IMO, the best answers ITT so far. When you're equally miserable next to them as you are away from them. When you spend more time trying to figure out how to fix it than enjoying it. If this is the case, you need to determine if it's worth it to stay. If you're lonely even when you're next to them, it's time to cut your losses. When you stop being you, and start being the person your so wants you to be. When you have to start justifying your relationship to friends and family, it's time to sit down and start weighing the pros and cons. When you realize you are sacrificing your own happiness? It was when I lost the will to bring up any of my own concerns or feelings because it wasn't worth the struggle. I just kept my mouth shut and dealt, because I hated the lengthy speeches and the way my ex would twist my thoughts and emotions around, which made me feel insane and doubt myself. In a nutshell, when I stopped advocating for myself in order to keep the peace, and when I was relieved to not be in the presence of my ex and actively avoided him, that's when I realized that the relationship had become far too unhealthy. Add these up and you have my last relationship. And boy was it time to walk away. Number 7. My fiancé and I went through a really rough patch, where I ended up leaving because I felt he was emotionally abusive. After I left, we found out that the basis for his problem was he was unknowingly addicted to his medication and suffering withdrawal, which is perpetuating his volatile attitude. He decided to try again. It's tough, but he's coming off the drugs and is much better and different than before. In the end, you have to decide what is best for you, to be happy. Number 8. Commenter, do they shut down your attempts to communicate? Do they belittle or minimize things you are unhappy with? Do they try to convince you things they did are your fault? Is the love, security, comfort, and routine you feel with them worth it? Are both partners contributing more or less equally or in a fair way that works for both partners on things like chores, money, childcare, and work/home life? If your best friend/sibling/cousin described your type of relationship and asked for your advice on staying or going, what would you tell them? If there are issues from them/you/everybody, are they willing to work on them with you or on their own? Do they value you, or for what you do for them? If they are rude to wait staff/cashiers/maids/etc., they will treat you the same way. Are they physically, mentally, verbally, or emotionally manipulative or abusive? If any of the above feel true, then that could be a bad sign. If multiple are true, it's probably a very bad sign. The good news is you can end a relationship at any time you choose, without needing a reason or event. If you are in an abusive relationship, there are tons of resources for help. Leaving may be extremely hard, but so very, very worthwhile. I guarantee there are healthy people out there who won't abuse you. Person B. I'm pretty pro relationships. I do know they take a lot of work and you have a lot invested in it. You are the only one who can decide what to do about your relationship. However, you can't ever change the other person. You can only change you. If you communicate clearly that things need to change, he needs to either start changing, or decide to continue on the way things are going. Anyway, I'm not trying to lecture you. I do wish you the best of luck. But I firmly believe people deserve great relationships, and this one sounds so-so. And leaving can be terribly hard and scary and involve all sorts of changes. Number 9. Ask yourself this. If I was single, yet still knowing what I know about him or how now, would I still voluntarily ask this person out on a date? Because a lot of people stay in a relationship out of convenience or fear of being single. This question eliminates it. Number 10. Commenter, no, we don't have kids, but a house, pets, joint finances, etc. However, we don't sleep in the same room anymore and barely speak. It's hard to know whether it's regular relationship work that we're just not putting in enough effort or whether it's just not right. Person B. I was in the same exact situation 2 years ago. Finally had the courage to leave. Took a day off and separated all of the accounts. Had a friend help me move out. I have never felt happier. It's worth it. You deserve to be happy. Don't let this drag on. Person C. These sound more like symptoms of an underlying problem than just a problem in and of itself, i.e., why you're not talking/sleeping with each other is the real issue at hand. Are the sleeping arrangements/silent spells prompted by arguments, perhaps frequently about the same or similar topics? Or is it just a i.e., don't feel like putting in the effort situation? Long-term relationships can be vulnerable to ruts on occasion. Finding and exploring a new, shared interest might help if that's the case. In any event, given the shared finances and pets, I would suggest looking into couples counseling. You both felt invested enough in one another's future to do those two things jointly. If it doesn't pan out afterward, then at least you can walk away knowing it didn't work for lack of trying. Number 11. My girlfriend had been abusing me for over a year. Both verbally and physically. I didn't do anything because I try to be a nice person and I thought she would change. As of 2 days ago I am free of her and don't have to worry about bruises and bleeding anymore. My shin is still up though. F girl. I realized it was time to go when she said I should just learn to deal with it. Number 12. If you're happier away from them than you are when you're with them. If they go somewhere by themselves and you feel relieved to see them go and do not look forward to their return. If you have to make it work versus just working. If you find yourself wishing you had never met them. If you catch yourself agreeing with them even if you disagree or swallowing your own feelings just to avoid another argument. If you start changing yourself to be who they want you to be, versus them loving you for who you are. Number 13. Just got out of a 10 years plus relationship that was toxic for both of us. Red flags, they dislike your family, all your friends. All of them. Without just cause. They limit your time with the above. They limit your sleep, micromanage your life. They will give up some control to make it seem like they are doing you a favor, but will make you feel guilty for it. They tell you to change everything about you, to mold you into something they want as their ideal, and they are not happy with the person you are to begin with. Your world suddenly becomes a tiny little closed-off room, your self-esteem crumbles and you silently regret each morning that you wake up. Frown. That was a year ago. Time heals all wounds and I'm with someone who is patient, kind and very understanding. Number 14. Everyone has their individual breaking point. Even in abusive relationships both partners are fulfilling some need in themselves to be a party to it. The abuser is filling a need and unfortunately the one being abused is also. If someone taking abuse can gain some self-esteem and confidence, then the relationship will not work for them anymore. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare. Anytime a meeting starts with why don't we go around the room and I'm already in a bad mood. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Introverts of Reddit. What are the most annoying things extroverts do? Number 1. There's a bar in my town that's known to have dance parties with live music. I do enjoy the scene to an extent, but I'm really there to just listen to music and hang out with friends. I'll sometimes dance if I get a few drinks in me, but usually I'm totally good to just sit back and enjoy. During the weekday nights, this bar is a bit more chill. I decided to check out the music on a Wednesday night. My friends weren't able to make it, so I ended up going by myself, something I'm actually pretty fine with. It ended up being not as chill as I had expected, but it was still okay. Lots of people were dancing. I got a drink and was just kind of swaying to the music. I was just doing me, vibing to the music and I was having a blast. This girl comes up to me and just goes, "Come on, no need to awkwardly sway. Don't be afraid to dance. No one here is going to judge." My initial thoughts were that she was just super drunk. Turns out she doesn't drink and is just this outgoing. She kept on trying to grab my hands to dance with me, even after I repeatedly told her to stop and that I'm comfortable just doing my own thing. I ended up leaving shortly after that because I became super self-conscious about my body movement / what I was doing. So, thanks to the person who tried to make me feel less awkward. You succeeded in making me feel more awkward. I don't need saving. Ugh. Number 2. The most annoying thing extroverts do is always trying to talk to you because they feel bad about you being so quiet and alone. Like, dude, I wanna sit in my own little corner chill. Also, when during groups discussions, when the teachers walk past and see you staring into space while everyone else is talking, they assume you aren't feeling well and ask you if you're okay. Number 3. Commenter. The most annoying things extroverts do is to try force you to be extroverted. Person B. Every self-help article about how to date when you're an introvert can be summarized as be an extrovert. Person C. I am an introvert and have successfully dated. It of course helps to be attractive, but the other thing that really works for me is just to accept that dating takes effort and will tire me out even if I have a good time. And that's okay. You don't go to the gym and expect not to be tired afterwards, but that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy working out. Person D. Agreed. I am a serious introvert, but my life would be way less fulfilling and way less rich with great life experiences in the realm of friends, partying, girls, etc. if I hadn't made a conscious effort get good at behaving in a more extroverted manner enough of the time to have the experiences I want to be a part of my life. Obviously, different people have different priorities, and it isn't something that will work or be possible for everyone. But I hate to think of someone just being like, I'm an introvert, and therefore I need to accept that I will never have the experience of being a charismatic fun person who is good with people and the opposite sex, and not even trying to make those things happen, if that is something they would like in their life. In terms of dating, it is nice to find someone, as I have been fortunate enough to, who is on the same page in terms of being an introvert, who also likes to sometimes be social, party, etc. But I wouldn't have found that person if at the time that we met I hadn't been making a real effort to be outgoing and fun and so on. Person E. I think the big thing is people assume introvert equals poor people skills. There are a lot of introverts that are super fun and cool people that can talk and do whatever, and plenty of extroverts that are awkward and get anxious in social situations. The difference is whether you become drained or energized when doing it. Number 4. Commenter. The most annoying thing extroverts do is interrupting. This is true especially when talking over a quiet person who doesn't speak as often. Person B. This is why I don't speak as often around certain people. I know you're just going to talk over me anyway. What good is it for me to talk at all? Number 5. Commenter. Call out quiet people. Sometimes they're introverted, sometimes they have a lot on their mind, but they would probably be talking if they wanted to be. Not to be confused with kindly approaching someone who's alone to be friendly or some motive of inclusion. This is more the loudly and belligerently pointing out that X is being too quiet for your taste. Person B. Glad this is at the top. My friend had a 30th B-day party and I met some of her other friends, including another couple she and her husband have known since college. They were talking college basketball the entire time. I'm not into it at all, so I had very little to say. The husband of the other couple said, "Why are you being so quiet?" Really loud in front of everyone. I was so embarrassed. I already felt so out of place. I am introverted, but I was also in a situation where I knew only 2 people and they were discussing a passion I didn't share and had zero knowledge about. Says a lot more about that person that they become uncomfortable when you're quiet than it does about the quiet person. Number 6. Commenter. When they wouldn't leave me alone even though I've made it very clear that I am not in the mood to talk or do anything with them. Person B. The problem is, they don't even understand your needs. They need time and attention, and they don't consider what you're doing to be anything worthwhile. So they think you're just withholding your attention from them because you're rude or you dislike them. I've tried to be candid with extroverts and say, you know, you're asking me to give up my 1/2 hour of free time today just to pay attention to you. And they never get it. They consider me to be not doing anything unless I'm hanging around with people. Number 7. Commenter. Invite more people over without telling you first and you're notified by their walking through the door. The more the merrier, right? Wrong. Person B. That happens all the effing time with one of my friends. I'm like, alright, I'll meet you there, and as I'm taking the train there, he's like, there's 3 of my friends coming, all of whom I've never effing met. I just sit there and don't say anything while he and his friends talk. When it's just the 2 of us, it's great, but when his other friends come, I get very uncomfortable. Person C. Yes, I have a friend who does this. We don't catch up very often as she doesn't live in the same town as me anymore, and when she comes to visit as a way of saving time, she'll set up a coffee date with several people she wants to see at the same time, so it ends up being me, her and 1 or more people I've never met. She never tells me in advance that someone else is coming. For C on E, I have a friend that does this too. I've repeatedly told her that meeting new people exhausts me both physically and emotionally, but she keeps doing it. The last few times, I've walked into the diner where we usually meet, seen the 4 or 5 people she's invited. I lock eyes with her, remain emotionless, and just turn around and leave. The last time, the hostess came up while I was staring her down, and asked if I was meeting someone. I said, quite loudly, that I was, but the person I was meeting has no concept of manners or consent. Turned and left. Haven't seen or heard from her in 9 months. That's okay. When having friends stresses you out, those people aren't your friends. They are the cause of your anxiety. Number 8. Commenter. The most annoying thing extroverts do is not understand my introversion. I once had a therapist. I told her that I like to spend my free time by myself. But in the workplace you will be expected to work with others. Yeah, I know, I work with others just fine. But you just said you like to be alone? Correct. But how can you work with others if you like to be alone? I mean, if this were some random idiot on the street it would still be annoying, but she was a licensed professional. She should know there is a huge spectrum between people who are the life of the party and people who are so socially inept they can't buy food. Person B. Sounds like a shitty therapist. Commenter. She was. I only saw her a couple more times, but each time there was a major red flag that she didn't know what she was doing. Person B. Could you share some of the other red flags? Commenter. Without going into my whole life story, let's just say I went through some issues my senior year of high school. I graduated in 2012, these therapy sessions were in 2018. So, considering there was a 6-year gap, I didn't remember every detail of what went down with perfect clarity. I remember having to drop a math course due to my issues. She asked me how my mom reacted. I told her I didn't remember. She started insisting that she would have remembered if she had been in my shoes, since parents have to sign a consent form to let their kids drop a course. And because I couldn't recall that detail, that I must have had issues with memory. A couple things, I was complaining daily about that class to my mom. When I told her I was thinking about dropping it, it was not out of the blue. 2. I looked up what my high school's policy on students dropping classes were. If you are a senior, you are allowed to drop courses without parental permission if the course is not required for graduation. Since the course I took was not required for graduation, I didn't need to get my mom to sign anything. I just went to my counselor and said I don't want to be in this class anymore, and a week later I was enrolled in study hall instead. And the math class was such a small insignificant part of a much larger story that I'm impressed I remembered as much as I did. I want to clarify that my issue wasn't, I had to drop a math course. My issue was a ton of shit happened to me at once when I was 18 that I didn't know how to emotionally handle, which resulted in me not spending as much effort on my schoolwork as I would have wanted to, which resulted in me dropping a math course. That math thing was so irrelevant to the larger issue, and she was asking me to recount this with picture-perfect clarity, then concluding I had Alzheimer's or something when I couldn't give every detail. Another one is that she started insisting I was gay and in denial about it because I wasn't interested in dating any of the girls at my local community college. Not being interested in a few specific people does not mean you reject an entire gender. Number 9. Commenter. Once in class I was just sitting there staring at the wall in front of me because class was boring. I actually was so deep in my mind that I didn't even notice what happened around me. At a certain point a girl in class had to go to the board. The board is basically 1 foot to the left where I was staring at the wall, to write something down. I didn't even notice that. Then like randomly a friend of mine jokingly yelled out loud, "Hey EVA. 0201, what the F are you looking at?" After his question I still didn't get what he meant and went back to doing nothing. After class some people looked at me in a kinda grossed out way and I asked my friend who sits next to me what happened, and he told me that my other friend tried to jokingly imply that I'd be looking at the girl's ass. Well, some people didn't get the joke and I felt kind of bad the rest of the week since I thought that everybody thought that I was a pervert. Moral of the story, don't look at walls next to the board. Person B, like you I stare into space when I'm thinking hard, and sometimes when I return to the planet I realize there's an uncomfortable looking person right in my stare space. Hey, I was already using that spot, no one made you go stand there. Number 10. Commenter. Extroverts in charge of work activities who absolutely insist you must have icebreakers every time. Person B. I hate icebreakers. Anytime a meeting starts with "why don't we go around the room" and I'm already in a bad mood. Person C. I'm personally fine with them as long as there's a set script, name, thing you do at work, team you're on, stuff like that. It's when you get the shit like "why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself" that I'm like, no god hi why. Person D. I think it's fair to call those ironic, since everyone is so busy thinking of what they will say that no one ends up actually listening or retaining what other people are saying. So 25 people say their names and no one really remembers any of them. Maybe you remember the hot girl/guy's name or something, but that's about it, just being real here. You could just have everyone write their names on some dry erase plaque and put it in front of them on the table when they sit down, and it'd be way more effective at people learning names. One thing I've learned about office environments is that there's a lot of stuff that's done despite it being rather unintelligent. It's just done that way since people are emulating what they've experienced in the past. They've been in meetings where they were asked to say their name, position, etc., so then when the time comes for them to run a meeting they just copy that plan without thinking of whether or not it's productive. Person E, anytime a meeting starts. That's when I'm in a bad mood. And yes, I'm an introvert. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. I watched him for a good 5 to 10 seconds as he stood there, facing into the darkness. He then proceeded to walk behind a couple trees and a car before he disappeared. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. What's your creepiest glitch in the Matrix or unexplainable thing that's ever happened to you? Number 1. Commenter. I used to have a recurring dream as a teenager every night for months. I was sitting at a table on the patio of a restaurant. I was out there alone, waiting for my food. A homeless man comes up to the other side of the patio and asks for change. I'm digging in my wallet for a couple dollars and then I hear tires screech and look up to see a crash in an intersection near the restaurant. I run out there to see if I can help, and as I run out into the road I get hit by a car and wake up at the impact. After a while the dream stopped and I put it out of my mind. Fast forward to me being 28 and sitting at and on the border, on the patio waiting for my food. A homeless guy comes walking past the restaurant but doesn't stop and ask for change. It makes me think about that dream though, and I start to feel uneasy. Shortly after, I hear the tires screech and I see a wreck happen in the intersection near the restaurant. I begin to run out there but stop at the sidewalk and look out towards oncoming traffic, and there is an SUV not slowing down. She was on her phone and blew through the intersection completely unaware of what had just happened. Ran out and checked on the people. Everyone was fine. Person B. Homeless guy is an angel in disguise. Asking for change, get it? You changed it. Person C. You did something to the timeline, so you survived. Number 2. Commenter. Weird but happy. About 5 years ago in November we lost our family dog to cancer. She was the dog my children grew up with, loved by all. At the next Christmas, at the end of the day of gifts, food and family, I found a tiny pewter dog figurine sitting on the mantle. I asked everyone who had been at the house that no one had. Okay, weird, but took it as a good omen. When my eldest went back to college at the end of that Christmas break, he asked if he could take the little figurine, to remember his dog. Of course, I said yes. A week or two later, picking up around the house, there was the figurine again. I called my son and said, "You forgot the dog figurine." He said, "No I didn't, it's right in front of me on my desk." I had now found a second figurine. Again, no one claimed any knowledge of it. No idea how, but I still have the two of them tucked away on a shelf to this day. Person B. You found a duplication glitch, use it wisely. Number 3. Commenter. This happened around 1991. It's the middle of the night. I'm standing in my sister's living room and it must be a full moon, because even though it's around 1 a.m. and the lights are off, I can see clearly. There's a mixing bowl with popcorn kernels in the bottom on the floor in front of the TV and some rental VHS in a pile nearby. I hear a noise and turn around to see my sister's normally very friendly Labrador retriever looking like Cujo. Fangs bared, snarling, hackles raised. Suddenly there's a bright flash of light and I wake up like I hit the bed from a great height. I think that was a weird dream. Eventually, I fall back to sleep. In the morning I call my sister, planning to tell her the story, but she preempts me by telling me about the weird thing that happened in the night. They woke up to the sound of the dog snarling at about 1 a.m. Her husband thought there was a prowler in the house, got a gun and went to find the dog. She was standing in the living room snarling at the middle of the room. He couldn't see anyone, so he flipped on the light. No one was there. The dog instantly stopped snarling and walked to her bed like nothing had happened. He checked the property and went back to bed. We talked a bit and I found out they watched some rental movies and of course we had popcorn. Why? My sister is a little woo-woo at times, so I decided not to tell her about my night. She lived about 450 miles away by the way. Person B, how the F you trying to tell me you accidentally astral projected? Whack. Commenter, even more whack, the dog knew I was there. Number 4. Commenter, at a friend's place back in 2008. When we were all teenagers, we had a cool shed at a friend that we'd hang out in every weekend. It had 4 sets of bunk beds, tables, a fireplace, TV, fridge, the whole lot. One night we were all hanging out in there when I decided I needed a piss. I walked out the front door of the shed and started to walk to the right when I stopped. Now let me explain the layout here. As you walk out of the shed, his house is to the left and to the right is where we all parked our cars. Further out you're left with empty fields and trees. It was dark by now, the lights from the house illuminating the space between the house and our cars, but trailing off just past them. As I took a step to the right, intending to go behind the cars to relieve myself, I saw my friend's older brother standing there. I watched him for a good 5 to 10 seconds as he stood there, facing into the darkness. He then proceeded to walk behind a couple trees and a car before he disappeared. Confused, I walked back into the shed and asked my friend what his brother was doing by the cars. The conversation went as follows. Hey man, what's your brother doing with the cars? What do you mean? He just walked off behind the cars. I'm right here. Say someone on the shed. I looked over and there his brother was, sitting down on one of the chairs with a drink. He was wearing the exact same clothes as I saw him in and the only way to get into the shed was through the door that I was standing in the way of. To this day, I've no idea how it all happened. I'm guessing I was just seeing things, but the fact that I watched him walk around for a good 10 seconds has always puzzled me. I've never had anything else like that happen. Number 5. Commenter. When I played baseball as a kid, they were handing out the trophies at the end of the season. They called out the names of the kids while we received our trophies. They happened to be a kid with the same name as me. We met after the ceremony because it was weird since our last name isn't a very common one. We had the same birthday and everything. We looked alike, both our dads were named Derek and both of our sisters were named Lily. As a kid, I found it cool. As an adult, I find it cool and also disturbing. Person B, don't freak out, but another guy with a similar username posted the exact same story. Number 6. Commenter. This summer I bought my girlfriend a last-minute birthday trip to go kayaking around the San Juan Islands off the Washington state coast. After a long drive and ferry trip, we found the tour group of about 20 people and were then shuffled into a shuttle van for a ride to the beach. Now, my girlfriend has a unique name similar to the name of a famous painter. Let's say it's Rebecca Warhol just for fun. She's a little ray of sunshine, and started chatting with the middle-aged woman sitting next to her on the shuttle as we waited to leave. The woman noted that she had always loved the name Rebecca, as it was her mother's name. They made pleasant small talk in the van until the tour guide passed around the sign-in sheet for all of us to fill out. That's when things got strange. My girlfriend wrote her full name on the sheet and passed it on to the woman, who immediately shouted "Oh my God," and started crying. After a few minutes of total confusion, she told us Rebecca Warhol was my mother's full name, and these islands were her favorite place in the world. She passed away this summer from cancer, and we've traveled hundreds of miles to spread her ashes here. We were stunned. I literally picked a random date, time, and tour company, and then we were split into the same group as this woman, and my girlfriend was sitting right next to her on the shuttle. What the hell? She continued by saying, my daughter told us that Nana Rebecca would be with us on this trip, and I didn't believe it until now. It was the most unbelievable coincidence we had ever experienced, and has totally convinced me that there's more to this world than we think. As my brother later said, the universe winked at us that day. Person B, time loop. Your girlfriend is Nana Rebecca. Number 7. Commenter. Several years ago, I went home, turned on my PC, browsed the web for a bit, literally watched a video about the Matrix, then looked out of my window. Then I suddenly snapped awake sitting in my chair. I looked at my monitor to see that it had turned off. I thought strange, I must have fallen asleep, and proceeded to move the mouse to wake my PC from sleep mode. It did not wake up. I was confused until I noticed that the power strip was not even plugged in. It had never been turned on in the first place. That one weirded me out for quite a while. I must have gone home, fell asleep and dreamt the whole thing, at least I hope so. Person B, you must have taken the blue pill. Commenter. Sounds like a choice I will make, to be honest. Number 8. Commenter, 1985. My ex-wife and I were sleeping. There was a small sliver of light coming in through the window from a streetlight, so the room and bed were dimly visible. Our black Pomeranian was at the end of the bed asleep. I dreamt that I woke up, reached down to pet him, and he turned into a glossy black bivalve/oyster thing which opened up to reveal rows of gleaming glass teeth. I woke up to my ex backpedaling up the bed over the pillows towards the wall. I asked what's wrong. She said, "What is that shiny black clam thing with the teeth at the end of the bed? Where's the dog?" We had had the same nightmare at the same time. This still gives me a chill. Person B. Sorry that your dog was haunted. Number 9. I died. I saw it, I lived it. Either it was another world with a version of me that died I saw, or I'm going crazy but I died. We had a pep rally in school, and after it was finished we had to go back to class. Well, my friend and I were not into that, so we wanted to go across the street to Sonic. Across the school there is not heavy traffic, but if you don't pay attention you could get hit. Well, I remember walking with him, and he dropped something, so I went across the street first. I just saw a red Tahoe heading right for me and I got hit. I remember everything. I remember gasping for air, I remember waking up and sleeping again. Then nothing. All of a sudden I was back in the stadium again, and the exact same words came out of the principal's mouth. My friend wanted to go get Sonic, but I was freaking out. Was asking him everything. I thought it had to be a dream, so I went with him just to see what would happen. He dropped his stuff again and I waited. To my horror, that same red Tahoe showed up. I told him that I'm going back to school, I ain't dying again. I can still see the other version of me on that street, just messed up. Not even moving. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. I woke up hanging upside down with my head pressed up against the roof. Slowly I started to hear my dad screaming at me to get out of the plane. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Were you ever that 1 in 1 million? If so, what's your story? Number 1. Commenter. I was kidnapped when leaving work and held for 18 months, along with 2 other girls. The guy who took us claimed himself to be an ineffable lower god, and used cult tactics, manipulation and control to have us be his family. I was allowed to leave to the grocery store as an errand, but knew if I didn't come back the others would receive my punishment. I finally got away by stabbing my captor when I believed he was going to kill me. Person B. What the F was it difficult to do mentally after 18 months, or were you okay with it? Commenter. Honestly, the only thing going through my mind at that moment of shock was how bad things would be for the others if I were no longer around. I was dead asleep. He threw open the door, pulled me out of bed by my hair and had a gun to my side and told me he was done with me. So, when he threw me to the ground, it knocked over my marble chessboard that I had on my nightstand. He gave it to me as a gift for Christmas, breaking it. When he pulled me back up to hit me, a piece was in my hand and went directly into his chest, and I took off running through the house and out the door, barefoot and wearing my underpants and a shirt. He shot his gun once, missing me, and I kept going until I found the highway. As I tried to flag down the few people who were driving by, a police officer stopped. He didn't care much about my story and acted like I was only a homeless. I went back on my own and found neither him or his brother there, presumably at the hospital, and the 3 of us stole his car and left. We presume he lived. Number 2. Commenter. For my 7th birthday we went to Disneyland. They just happened to be having a car a day giveaway when we were there. For my 7th birthday, Mickey Mouse gave me a Pontiac Firebird. Person B. Do you still have the car? Commenter. Nah, since I was only 7 at the time, the car went to my mom. By the time I was old enough to drive, it was scrap. Number 3. Commenter. I was diagnosed with leukemia. I got a bacteria growth which killed the leukemia, a real 1 in 1 million chance. Also, I almost died thanks to that bacteria though. Person B. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Number 4. Commenter. I once guessed a 6-digit random combination on the first try. It was the only try I planned to give, as a kind of scratch pad whatever moment. Person B. What was it? Commenter. Can't remember. It was 6,453, Then 2 more numbers. It was not a physical lock, it was on a computer. I immediately texted my friends about it. Person C, literally 1 in a million. Number 5. Commenter, not sure about the odds on this one, but I survived a non-survivable plane crash. I was on an old Po-2 plane, famous for being very safe and uncrushable, on a tour of the desert in western China when I was like 7. My father's friend who hosted me and piloted the plane didn't survive, but somehow I got out with a concussion and apparently passed out for almost a day in the middle of the desert, in the wreckage of the crash, 50 kilometers from the town/airport, on the edge of the desert. The people who found me were some tree planters, found me on their way picking up a shipment, and the only reason they looked was because they were making a bet on how fast the egg would cook in the sand and went off the road to test. So, according to my dad, the theory that I might have lived was because the plane was mostly made out of fabrics and wood. So when the plane crashed, the front half collapsed and took the majority of the impact. Though I got knocked out, I was probably covered under the wreckage and in the shades. It cooled me off enough to survive for a day or so. Person B, so how fast did the egg cook? Commenter, apparently the legend is that it can be cooked in 15 minutes. Number 6. Commenter, I was also in a non-survivable plane crash when I was 16 in our family's Piper Cherokee 180. We took off and were hit with a wind shear, so we flew along and all of a sudden the plane just had zero lift under the wings, and we started to fall out of the sky. We were about 1,000 feet in the air when it started, and my dad thought it was just turbulence, so he started doing whatever pilots do, and before he knew it we were starting to hit the tops of the trees. Then the wing on the right side of the plane got ripped completely off, tearing most of my side of the plane off with it. This caused us to roll upside down while crashing through the trees, so we hit our noses first upside down. I woke up hanging upside down with my head pressed up against the roof. Slowly I started to hear my dad screaming at me to get out of the plane. It was like in a movie when a bomb goes off, and they are stumbling around while their ears are ringing. I was just hanging there and nothing was registering. Eventually I came to and realized that the engine was on fire and it was coming into the cockpit, so I took my seat belt off and crawled out. My friend was in the back seat and crawled out behind me, and by the time my dad was climbing out, the cockpit was almost completely engulfed in flames, so I ran back and pulled my dad out because his panic dive out of the plane didn't quite get him all the way out. We finally all get out and are running away and get about 50 feet from the plane when the other wing catches on fire and explodes. The Federal Aviation Administration says they've never seen a crash like this where anyone survived. All 3 of us walked away with minor injuries. Number 7. Commenter, I had 2 11-centimeter benign tumors growing in my spine, resulting in gradual paralysis from my chest down. They had no idea how the tumors formed. Surgery took 11 hours when they thought it would take 4 because the tumors were so complexly woven throughout my spine. I now have pretty much half a spine and chronic pain, but I'd take that over losing my life from paralysis and being unable to breathe. Person B, this reminds me of my own story minus the cancer. I've had back pain my whole life. One day I threw out my back again, and my ex-girlfriend, who was a cut no slack kind of girl, took me to the doctor to get it checked out. Turned out my lowermost vertebrae had been fractured for the last 10 years. Number 8. Commenter, came to share I got struck by a feeler of lightning, according to the fire department, because I was watching a wicked thunderstorm on a cordless home phone. My neighbor's house got struck right by my bedroom window, where I was pressed up against it talking to my friend about the insane frequency of the strikes. I remember dropping the phone, slowly dropping to the floor, and then time feeling really weird. Mom found me laying there when she came to tell me the neighbor's house was on fire. I was conscious but very out of it. She got me up, helped me outside, and the fire department basically said the same thing. Zapped, we'll be fine. Don't be on your phone in a thunderstorm. Also, the fire was small and only burned a hole in their roof, damaged their attic some. Everyone walked away okay. Person B, so this is actually much scarier than the fire department made it sound. When lightning strikes, it sends feelers towards the ground to try to make a grounded connection, then it pumps all its voltage to whichever is the strongest connection it hits. Until that feeler connects, the lightning won't actually strike. You were saved by it grounding into your neighbor's house, because if it hadn't, you were truly milliseconds away from having the entire bolt pumped through you. The metal in the phone likely attracted the feeler, but couldn't find a good ground, so went through the house instead. Number 9. I was actually homeless for 4 years between 19-23 years old. As silly as it sounds, I used to earn some extra money at the time by helping around in a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. It was my biggest hobby when I was younger and was something I felt confident about. I also didn't have a passport or a bank account, so I couldn't get a normal job. Anyway, at the time I was stuck not earning enough money, without a passport, a bank account, or a real job. In the United Kingdom you won't get hired by 99% of companies if you don't have a passport to prove you have the right to work. So one day I got a phone call from a studio asking if I played Yu-Gi-Oh! And would consider myself a geek, also if I wanted to be in a TV show. They said they would send me to another country as part of it. Being homeless, the biggest problem is being bored, so naturally I said yes, but told them I don't have a passport. No problem, we'll get you one straight away and pay for it ourselves. I ended up on a show called Geeks that you can still watch on Channel 4 Odd. Because I got this passport I was finally able to get a job, a bank account, and finally a house. Now I'm looking after my 10-month-old daughter who's playing while I type this. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Saved me from being homeless. I might be an anime character. Number 10. Commenter. How I met my wife. I'm from the Netherlands, she is from the US. We met in Israel. It was my first weekend in Israel. I decided to go on a pub crawl to meet some people and have fun. As I'm buying the ticket, my now wife walks up to the counter to also buy a ticket. The girl working there introduces us. We hit it off the first night, but I'm leaving in 2 days to stay with friends of friends in the middle of the desert for 3 months. 2 days after I leave I lose my phone, don't have any way to get back in touch with her. I had little money and could stay/work with the people in the desert. But I kept thinking about her, so after a week I said I'm leaving. Take the next bus and then a train to Tel Aviv, the city where I met her. I had no idea how to find her, where to stay, and very little money. I email a couple hostels to find a work/stay agreement. Those jobs are very popular and usually plan months in advance. This is already ridiculously lucky. I get an email back when I arrive in Tel Aviv. I can come in for an interview because they have a spot. Right after the interview and dropping of my belongings, I went back to the first hostel to see if they would give me information. They wouldn't give me anything. Now I'm at a loss. Tel Aviv is a city of more than 500,000 people. I don't know anyone and have little more than the clothes on my back. Kind of defeated, I start wandering around/exploring the city. After a couple of hours I get hungry and decide to treat myself to a restaurant. I'm well out of the tourist area and find a place that's almost empty and rather cheap. I sit down, order a drink and something to eat. As I get my food I see my now wife walking past the restaurant. She sees me. I see her. I'm literally dumbstruck, and I just kind of grin and wave. Remember how I lost my phone? She didn't know that and just thought I ignored her. She waves back and keeps walking, ignoring me. I throw like 200 shekels, way too much money, in the table and sprint after her, explained, and the rest is history of love. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. I say out loud so, about my height, my hair color, and glasses like mine, before realizing Bob was describing me to the cops. Hey everybody, welcome to AskReddit. People ask Reddit. What major plot twist moment you have had in your life? Number 1. When I was 15, my siblings and I were put into foster care. We had no idea why until the social worker told us that parents were using drugs. Our after-school jobs were helping them pay for drugs. They said our money was being saved. My dad wasn't my real dad, and 3 out of 5 of my siblings were half-siblings. My real dad kidnapped my brother and I when we were babies. We were returned to my mom when he confessed to murdering a woman and then went to jail. He had since been released, and we visited him to discover that he had started another family. It was quite the mind F. Number 2. Commenter. I was a Starbucks barista before the whole names on cups thing was big, or at least, it wasn't really practiced in my tiny store. There was this very cute guy who came in maybe 4 to 6 times a week. A little often, but nothing out of the ordinary. I flirted like mad. He flirted back. It was all great, and I was falling in love for him. Then one of the other days after that, he comes in with his fiancée. I was betrayed and treated him coldly from then on. A month later, 2 of him come in together and I find out that they are twins, and I'd shot down any chance I had with a single one. Person B. I'm really sorry for you, but that's hilarious. Number 3. Commenter. I'm involved in court case, the opposing party filed reports, saying bad things about me basically, multiple times citing a credible source. Found out by pure luck, and carelessness on another party, that my blog was the credible source. I just sat in the courtroom after realizing this going holy shit, I am my own worst enemy I guess. Number 4. Commenter. My wife's uncle is an incredibly nice guy who absolutely adores his wife. We started hearing about marital issues. He was becoming more and more argumentative, and then he hit her one night. They separated shortly afterwards. He harassed her to the point that she got a restraining order. He defied the restraining order and was put in jail. In jail his issues got him a medical evaluation. Turns out he had a brain tumor. They removed it. He returned to his normal, and was released from jail. They're back together with him back to his wife adoring self. Person B. Yeah, that's a tough one. It makes you wonder how much free will you actually have until you had signals in your brain that fire to make you feel enraged, or incredibly paranoid, or deeply depressed. Are your decisions really your decisions? Number 5. Commenter. When I was younger, around 10 or so, I'm 26 now, I found out my dad was a drug addict. My whole life I thought it was my mom who was mean and angry all the time, but she did her best to hide my dad's stuff from me. It really blew my mind when I realized how she tried to shield me. I didn't get why she was so angry, when I just wanted a little love and time with my dad. I didn't understand that he wouldn't come home or to birthdays, and I didn't know the way he acted was weird, because he was a cool person to stay with. That's how I always knew him, like a hero guy that made me happy. So it was really a complete flip in my mind when I found out he was the one actually causing all the problems. At least my relationship with my mother was better afterwards. Number 6. Commenter. So recently I helped clean out my parents' basement, since they really needed it, that place was a shithole. I find a box with a bunch of pictures in it, and begin to reminisce about how awesome my childhood was. Me on the NES, me at Disney World, my brother and I at a football game, but then I get to the last picture on the bottom. It is my dad, my mom, and some random chick that looked to be in her early 20s. The picture, judging by the hair, was taken mid to late 80s/early 90s. Hey Dad, I called. What? He yelled back from upstairs. Who is this in the picture? I went upstairs to show him. He stared at it for a moment, blinked, and said, "That is your half-sister, Andrea." What? I pursue it more. Half-sister? What? I then proceeded to find out that he had been married before when he was 18 to some stripper from Vegas. He lived in Arizona until he was about 30. Lorelei, or by her stripper name, Karma, yeah what effing whatever, had been married to him for about a year until he realized she was a shopaholic, shoplifting, coke dealing, heroin taking and abusive bitch to her daughter. He got the F out, and gave the child to his parents to raise because he was 19 years old. I now have a half-sister who I plan to meet. Person B. Well, whoa. I love how offhandedly your dad dealt with that. Yeah, that's your half-sister that I never told you about. Commenter. Yeah, he was as casual as F while my jaw broke the floor. Number 7. The one guy I worked with was having a baby. He told me about his girlfriend. Yeah, she's pretty big, but she's amazing, she's the one for me. I didn't know him very well, but as he talked about the pregnancy and so forth and I gave him encouraging words and how his life was going to change, we bonded a bit. His baby was going to be born right before Christmas. He missed our work Christmas party because his baby was being born. We expect him to be gone for paternity leave, but he shows up a few days later. I feared the worst, that the baby had died. It turned out his girlfriend was lying about being pregnant to spend more time with him. I didn't think much of it at the time, but the fact that he brought up she was fat for no reason must have meant she was so fat you couldn't tell whether she was pregnant or not. She showed him someone else's ultrasounds, they talked about what they would name their baby, how they'd handle taking care of it, all that shit. I don't know what she thought was going to happen when 9 months passed and no baby. I guess it's good she came clean though, a more diabolical person would have faked a miscarriage or something. But that was seriously messed up. Shortly after the dude left, so I don't really know how he handled it. Number 8. Commenter. In primary school we had a World War I memorial lesson, and we were asked if anyone had any relatives who fought at the time. My friend brought in a picture of his great-great-grandfather with his wife. A girl also brought in a picture of her great-great-grandfather with his wife. The teacher said they looked similar. She put them side by side and looked shocked. We gathered around and it was the same man who had kept his 2 wives a secret. Both had been married privately. They were cousins and didn't know. Person B, a secret for almost 100 years, and he almost got away with it. Person C, if it weren't for those meddling kids. Number 9. Commenter. My sister's boyfriend decided that he wanted to do more with his architecture skills, so he gave his 2 weeks notice and moved to Haiti to help rebuild after the earthquake. They stayed together. He had bad phone service, so they mostly kept in touch through emails. He would send her long emails with photos and stories of what they were doing. This went on for a couple of months. She had a one-off-handed tip from a coworker in his email, and a week of sleuthing later and it turns out he never went to Haiti. He moved to Seattle to be with his fiancée and partner of 9 years. Person B. How did she know about that? Reverse image check? Commenter. Yes. My sister did this with some photos he sent and learned that he had just pulled them off Google. Number 10. My twin sister and I were born through in vitro fertilization. Our mom wanted nothing more than to have kids, and her circumstances led her to use a sperm donor. When we were 3 years old, our mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. When we were 6, she passed away. My sister and I were taken in by our aunt, our mom's younger sister. She already had 2 sons and a husband. It was a crazy and emotional time for all of us, but we have become an amazing family unit, and I consider my mom, dad, and brothers as much my immediate family as my sister. You might think this was the major plot twist in my life, but it gets crazier. About 4 years ago, I learned that not only did my original mother have sperm donated to her, but she also had eggs donated to her as well, by her little sister. I lost my biological mom only to be rescued by my genetic mom. All those years I had laughed at the people who said I looked like my brothers and my mom, but the joke was on me. When I think about the sacrifices my 2 moms have made for me and my sister, it blows my mind. Number 11. 1991, I'm 19, just signed the lease for my first apartment, just got the first paycheck from my new job. I deposited the paycheck at an ATM for the first time. 2 weeks later, I get my bank statement in the mail, and see with horror I have only $1.87 in my account. Way wrong, I should have at least $200, I'd been very careful with my spending. I'm freaked, I came within $2 of bouncing my first rent check. I'm literally reaching for the phone to call the bank when the phone rings. It's the police, asking if my ATM card was stolen. I check my wallet and the card is missing, and tell them I was going to call them anyway because I was missing $200 from my account. Well, we've got your card, and your $200, so come down to the police station, they tell me. I can't figure out how they have my card and the cash. Doesn't make sense. I drive down there. Detective says someone, let's call him Bob, pulled in to use an ATM and saw a man acting suspiciously while he was using it, moving back and forth as if trying to dodge the camera. Bob says the crook then left the ATM, got into a car, and drove away at high speeds as if fleeing. Bob then went to the ATM and put his card in, which popped out. He then withdrew $200, and then another ATM card popped out. My card. Bob's card had popped out because the crook had left my card in the ATM before speeding away. Bob realized he had withdrawn the money from my account and not his, so he brought my card and the cash to the police and reported the attempted theft. The detective gives me the description of the crook. According to Bob, it was a man 5 feet 7 inches, brown hair, round gold-rimmed glasses. I say out loud so, about my height, my hair color, and glasses like mine, before realizing Bob was describing me. I'd never deposited a check in an ATM before, so I was moving back and forth, following the instructions on the screen, filling out the envelope with my account number, punching the amount in, etc. I then forgot to take my card out and just left because I'm a fucking idiot. I drove away at high speeds because I was 19 and that's how I drove everywhere. Worried the detective might be annoyed, I didn't tell him I was the crook. I just thanked him and left with the money I stole for myself. Somewhere in a box in my closet I still have the police report where I'm both the victim and the perp. Number 12. Little town I grew up in had these 2 car dealerships on opposite sides of town, one Chevy, one Ford. They were bitter rivals. Attack ads, shit-talking salesmen, billboard wars, you name it. When the owner of the Chevy dealership died, it came out he'd also owned the Ford dealership by way of a shell company. No one saw that coming, including a lot of the higher-ups who worked at the dealerships. That sounds like the ultimate bored rich guy, buy 2 car dealerships, have the managers shit-talk each other and watch the fight. Number 13. I graduated law, and got engaged to the girl I had been with through university. We both applied for the same graduate program and ended up working in the same office in Canberra. I found out she was cheating on me with our mutual boss, and I broke it off with her. The relationship got really ugly and the two of us ended up in a very bitter court case over property. Canberra is a pretty small city and the legal world is pretty bloody small there, too, and everywhere when I bumped into my ex. It was beginning to seriously get me down, her too, as it transpired, and I applied for an Australian government overseas development job in Tuvalu, a Pacific island with about 11,000 population. It's quite a prestigious job to get, with only 2 positions offered for a 2-year contract on a rotating basis. I was successful in the application and moved on island to start my posting, to discover that my ex was the other successful applicant. I spent the next 2 years sharing a tiny office on a tiny island with the person that I quite honestly loathe more than any other in the world. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. He screamed help. And only I came. When I screamed fire, the whole building came. Hey everybody, welcome to AskReddit. People ask Reddit. What knowledge might save your life one day? Number 1. If you're ever on a dark highway at night and suddenly an unmarked car behind you flips police lights on but you don't feel right about the situation, drive slowly and cautiously to a brightly lit/populated area before pulling over. You can also call 911 to find out if there are actually any cops in the area that would be out there to pull you over. If they say no, request for a cop to meet you at a nearby location. There are a lot of carjackers/muggers/etc. that use fake police lights to get people to pull over on a dark and lonely roads because who isn't going to stop for a cop? If it is a real officer, it may annoy them that you made them follow you for a few miles to a public area, but better safe than sorry. As far as I know, as long as you're not leading them on a high-speed chase/clearly trying to evade them, they can't punish you for it. Be anal though, and maybe some actual police officers can chime in. Number 2. If you ever drive into water with your car, try to get out ASAP. Do not wait until the car fills with water and equalizes pressure, as some people may tell you. Most situations where this is the case, the car will sink faster than equalization. Even when full, the water pressure outside is higher than inside. Best advice is to keep a seatbelt cutter and a glass breaking hammer in your car. Get out as quickly as possible. Number 3. If you happen to be walking near a downed power line, do not take your feet off the ground. This can create a potential between you and the ground and cause a discharge through your body. Take small shuffling steps away, without picking your feet up, from the power line and call the authorities. If you happen to be walking near a downed power line, do not take your feet off the ground. This can create a potential between you and the ground and cause a discharge through your body. Take small shuffling steps away, without picking your feet up, from the power line and call the authorities. Number 4. If a service dog comes to you for attention, immediately locate their owner. They could be using a last-ditch effort to get help. A few months ago, when I was on a delivery for work, I was stopped by a dog who ran out in the middle of the road, residential. I got out and tried to move the dog, but it followed me all the way to the door of my delivery. Once I was done, I checked the dog's tag to bring it home, and I noticed he had all kinds of medical tags. After I realized what the dog was trying to do, I ran towards the correct address and the dog led me through a screen door on the porch. His owner was passed out on the floor, and I called 911. The individual had a phone, brought by the dog, by its head, and a bag of medications by his side. The dog had done everything it was trained to do, but the person had passed out before it could do anything. The ambulance came, got his pulse back, and took him to the hospital. I don't know if he ended up surviving, but if I hadn't checked the dog's tags and realized it was a medical animal, I wouldn't have hurried, blatantly invited myself in his house, and ultimately get into a point of survival. Number 5. A person who is drowning doesn't look like people drowning on TV. When someone is drowning, they rarely cry out, can't wave their arms around, and will often just bob/sink at the surface for a very little while, often gasping, before submerging. Don't expect it to look like the movies when you're keeping an eye on swimmers. To expand, they will be vertical in the water, head back, mouth open. You have around 30 seconds to get them out before the average person goes under at this point. It is usually a silent process. If you are at a pool and it gets quiet, get alert. Number 6. Commenter. If you somehow find yourself so deep in a body of water that you can't tell which way is up, blow bubbles and follow them up. But not too many bubbles or you'll run out of air. Person B. On a side, if you get buried in snow, let saliva drip out of your mouth. Gravity will tell you which way is up. Number 7. Commenter. You can make emergency calls in Australia, even if you have no credit and no bars of reception on your network. Your phone will use any network that's around. Person B. Same in the US as well. Number 8. Commenter. If you are deep frying something and the entire effing pot is on fire, do not put it out with water. Turn off the gas/electric range. Don't pour water on it. Cover the pot with a lid. Don't pour water on it. If you don't have a lid, dump baking soda on it. Don't pour water on it. If you pour water on it, your house might burn down and your face might melt. Person B. If I am remembering correctly as well, do not use flour in lieu of baking soda. The small particles when dispatched into the air can cause an explosion. Number 9. When someone shouts duck, don't question an effing duck. Yell duck to my friend. His response quack right before the side mirror of an old Chevy pickup truck smacked him in the head. Never laughed so hard. It was low speed in a parking lot. Gave him a hell of a bump. But it could be worse, as a faster or dangerous thing could hit him. Number 10. If you're performing CPR on someone who's stopped breathing/heart has stopped, don't stop until EMTs take the body away. Don't stop after 2 minutes thinking, well, that didn't work. CPR typically won't cause the victim's heart to suddenly start and/or for them to jerk awake. It's mostly to force blood circulation to prevent brain death. You're not forcing life into them, you're preserving a corpse to keep a revivable state. Number 11. If someone gets stabbed, do not take the knife out if possible. If it stays in, it acts as a plug to the hole and will reduce blood loss. Apply pressure around the wound as best you can and call an ambulance. Especially if it's serrated. I almost died because my buddy thought he knew better than me. I love you, Sean, but F you and your shitty ideas. Number 12. If in danger, scream fire. Because if you scream robber or murderer, some people may think it's your problem, but fire is everyone's problem, and they will come to help. My source. A guy with a knife once entered through a window in my apartment building and tried to kill my neighbor. He screamed help. And only I came when I screamed fire. The whole building came. The guy just exits where he entered as soon as possible. Number 13. If a hostile dog is confronting you, do not run. It can outrun you, and the minute you turn your back, it'll see it as a sign of weakness and may attack. Instead, keep eye contact with the dog and try to find something long like a branch or pole. Face the dog and start slowly backing in the direction you need to go while shouting at the dog. If the dog comes at you, hit its face with the branch and shout. It will most likely back up out of the range of the stick. Use your phone to call for help if you can. Number 14. As you age and experience those minor ailments of life, such as bad knees or frozen shoulders, get them fixed. I'm 54 years old and I have personally watched healthy family members ignore these issues and act like cowboys. Only to be put in nursing homes way early because they can no longer walk or care for themselves, simply because they never had these things taken care of. Number 15. If you have a squeezing, tight sensation in the middle of your chest that travels up the jaw and shoulders, or down the left arm, stop what you are doing and chew up an aspirin and wash it down with water. Then call emergency services. You are likely having a heart attack and aspirin is known to thin the blood enough to save your life. Number 16. Yell at a knife, whisper at a gun. If you yell at an attacker with a knife, there is a small chance that could startle them and they drop it. At the least, you are attracting attention and can get out of the situation. Always whisper at someone with a gun, or at least, speak slowly and calmly. If you yell, that could startle them, and you could get shot. If someone is pointing a gun or knife at you and asks for your wallet, give them your wallet. Odds are the person wasn't planning to hurt you anyway, but don't bet on your attacker's goodwill. There's nothing in your wallet that can't be replaced. Number 17. If you're in a water landing in an airplane, don't inflate your life jacket inside the cabin. This will cause you to float to the top and you won't be able to get out through the doors. This killed a lot of people on Ethiopian Airlines Flight 961, who emerged from the crash just fine but drowned in the cabin. Just swim past the door, then inflate the life jackets. Number 18. Establish a code word with your parents/guardians and loved ones for the off chance you're kidnapped and or held for ransom. Could be a way to speak their name or just make a greeting that is known for your parents to be alert. Personally, I always refer to my father with Dad, but if I ever find myself being taken for ransom and told to call my parents, then I refer to him by first name. Even if you're not held for ransom, oftentimes kidnappers have their victims call their parents or guardians to make small talk with them. This is done in order to ward off any sense of alarm from parents/guardians and maximize time for whatever the kidnappers intend on doing. My father told me if I ever used this form of code talk, he'd contact the authorities immediately and have my phone's location traced, which brings me to another tip. If you do not have a mobile phone on you and your kidnappers do not too, request to use a landline because I've heard police officers have an easier time locating a landline than a mobile phone. Number 19. If you are being chased by a swarm of bees, do not jump into a lake or other body of water to escape. This isn't a cartoon. The bees will simply wait above the water to sting you, and now you have created a situation where you move slower, can't breathe as well, and suffer worse if the toxins affect you. You may even swallow a bunch of bees gasping for air. Also, water has unseen predators that you've now introduced to the equation. If pursued by bees, just keep running and running. They will defend their hive to a large proximity, perhaps even a mile. Just run until they feel they've won. Number 20. There is no such thing as a fair fight. If it's a life-threatening situation, fight dirty. Attempt to bite if you are pinned down, and press the base of your thumbs onto their eyes if necessary. As soon as you get the opportunity, run towards the nearest place with people around, and report to the police. Obvious, but often people view fighting as a boxing match. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time. Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe, if you dare. The bedroom door was open and a very thin, pale woman with very curly dark hair was standing there, looking at us. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Serious, what is the most eerie and terrifying thing you've witnessed but no one believes you saw? Number 1. I was on the scene of a 4-car collision that was caused by a drunk driver. There were several serious injuries and my dad and I were helping tend to people until help came. I got to the main vehicle that had caused the accident and was so close that my hands were on the passenger door, the window was gone and I leaned in. I leaned in because there was no one in the car. I kept looking and there was no one. I'll swear to this day there was no one in that car. I could see the inside, destroyed and empty and full containers of alcohol but nothing else. I leaned back and looked at my dad and he shook his head at me as if to say don't look. The newspaper article the next day reported that the driver and his niece and nephew were all killed in that car and that they did have their seat belts on. I know there are stories of people's own brain blocking out things like this, but I kept looking, trying to see in that moment, and even today I can't understand it. Person B, this may be F up, but serious car accidents can mutilate people. For example, some NASCAR crashes like Tony Renna didn't even leave bodies. It could have been that you just weren't able to recognize the remains of human bodies that were melded into the wreckage. Number 2. When I was 3, I was playing with my brother on a pier. My parents stopped looking after us for a moment because I guess no one can stay vigilant non-stop. So with my brother we started climbing into boats and jumping from one to another, and of course because I was very small I missed, fell into the water and almost drowned. My father suddenly remembered that he had children just in time to come back on the pier and to see me fall into the water and ran to fish me out. This story is my very first memory. I don't remember everything, but I remember the hand coming down to grab me. What I can't explain is that I also clearly remember a woman with green hair trying to pull me into the deep, grabbing by my feet. I told them about the woman on the lake, but we waited and nobody came or was possible to see. Number 3. One was when I was around 9, walking with my friend from her place to my place. Our places were like a 10-minute walk apart. Some grown bald guy in all black with sunglasses on started following us. After 2 minutes of him following us we just kinda started crossing the street, walking to another street, etc. This dude kept following us and every time we looked behind us he kept pretending to be checking the soles of his shoes, like he stepped in dog poop. He was super close to us the whole time, so we just ran. Got to my place and we both started crying. We had an active imagination, so my mom questioned us if it was actually 100% true, and when we said yes, she called the police. They took a statement, but nothing came of it. A few years later in the news, they were looking for a child molester and the face sketch looked exactly the same. Number 4. It was late at night and I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go out to look at the stars to get sleepy. When I went close to the door, I heard a huge bang, like something big was falling, coming from outside the flat, behind my door. I went with caution and looked through the little hole on the door to see what was happening. I saw 2 people just standing there outside the lift, one of them holding something. I couldn't tell what it was, but they weren't friendly. I looked some more, and then it was when I saw that there was a person besides them on the floor, not moving or seemingly breathing. I heard them saying something to one another. I didn't really catch what though before they started dragging the person on the floor out of the flat and into a van before speeding off like crazy. I tried to tell my family, but they said it was just a nightmare. I know what I saw. Number 5. It wasn't something I saw, but rather something I heard. I was putting my 4-year-old son to sleep for the night. I had just finished reading to him, and he had already dozed off, so I just laid there in his bed for a little while. I heard his pull-string Woody doll go off. It was laying on the floor next to the bed. It said, "Boy, am I glad to see you." For those who don't know, the Woody doll is like the doll from the movie. He has a few little sayings, and he says a different one every time you pull the string. It startled me, but I didn't think too much of it. I figured his string had gotten snagged up or something. I was just about to get out of bed when he did it again. Not a different saying either. It said, "Boy, am I glad to see you again," twice in a row, which doesn't happen. He says a few different sayings, but always in the same order. This time I picked it up, took a look at the string, and saw that it wasn't snagged or anything. I was holding it in my hand, about to set it back down when it did it again. "Boy, am I glad to see you." That freaked me out. A lot. It didn't help that I was home alone with my sleeping kid. I literally looked the doll in the face and said out loud, "Okay, you're freaking me out," Wood, and dropped it. He stopped after that. We still have Woody. He's never done anything weird since. If you pull his string, he says all of his sayings in the correct order. Everyone shrugs off my Woody experience, but it was really creepy, I swear. Don't F with cowboys. Number 6. When I was around 15-16, I was staying at a friend's house. His parents were out and we were babysitting his little brother for the night. His family lived on the top floor, his grandparents on the bottom. It was a huge farmhouse, so it was still a big house. We got to bed late, and at one point I woke up in the night to the landing light on, the bedroom door was open, and a very thin, pale woman with very curly dark hair was standing there, looking at us. I figured his parents came home early and brought a friend with them and went back to sleep. In the morning my friend asked me if I saw the woman last night. I said yes, and we went out into the house to see if his parents were home. Nope. His grandparents were still asleep, the house was locked up tight. Really freaking weird. We even asked his parents if they came home and went out again because it was so weird we both saw that woman. They'd been out all night. The area was weird though. My mom had grown up on the next farm and was terrified of the place because weird stuff kept happening. Everyone said it was haunted. He lived next to a disused railway line where there were no longer any tracks, and people kept seeing the train and seeing a man hanging there. His house had other weird things that happened when I was there, but it wasn't scary. Number 7. When I was coming home from my internship at a research center/hospital, and since I use public transport, I had to get off at a station to take a different train. While waiting at the platform, the lady/girl in front of me suddenly jumped in front of the train, resulting in something I can only unfortunately describe as meat confetti. Afterwards I called up my girlfriend, who I was living with at the time, still do, to explain that I wouldn't be able to get home since someone jumped in front of the train. Now in the Netherlands it's not uncommon to have delays in the entire train system due to these events. Apparently I didn't sound overly emotional or anything, shock, so she just assumed that somewhere on a different platform someone jumped in front of the train so my train couldn't leave. So she went to her martial arts lessons, and I was absolutely stunned that someone so close to you could be so casual about such an event happening to a loved one. When I finally did end up getting home, I basically broke down, and it was only when calling her again that she understood what had actually happened and immediately rushed home. Only later learned that the girl turned out to be a 19-year-old student with severe psychosis/mental issues from a coworker/fellow intern who knew her from the school she was attending. Number 8. I was like 12 and no one but me and my dog were in my apartment. I was listening to my music with my dog on my bed and my room closed. My door had a see-through glass part on the head part of the door. My dog started barking really loudly and I brushed it off as him hearing my neighbors that were loud usually. But when he got up to bark at the door, it gave me a bad feeling inside my chest, so I patted him on the head waiting for him to calm down. 10 minutes pass and he lays down next to my bed calm. And then another 10 minutes passed and I continued listening to music when my dog curled up growling, but in a scared way this time. Turning his head on the door, I looked up the top of the clear door part and saw a lady full white, and that sounds cliche, but her hair was white and so was her dress and skin. She passed to the room next to mine really fast. I didn't see her face, but it scared me shitless. No one believes me, but I did see her and I didn't leave my room then. I just curled up under my blanket with my dog close to me. I haven't seen her since and now I moved. But it was really weird. I recall as a younger child hearing a lady inside those walls singing, and mom said it was the pipes probably, but the melody of the noise didn't sound like a pipe. Number 9. Flying over Calgary, Canada on an international flight, 30,000 plus feet. Staring out of the window and saw in the distance a round white object, seemed to have 4 jet engines pointing downwards that were slowly rotating around it. Friend sitting next to me saw it as well. It disappeared behind the wing, and as we waited for it to appear on the other side, it was gone. Asked the pilot what it was as we left the plane, and he looked at me like I was an idiot. Stop telling people about it now, as everyone just rolls their eyes. Not saying it was aliens or anything, but for weeks I searched online to try and get some kind of idea what it was, and nothing. Number 10. In June 2012, I saw a plane crash in the Nevada desert. I was installing road closed markers in Quinn Canyon, about 150 miles north of Las Vegas. A KC-135 tanker was circling far to the south, with 3 small, single-engine jets trailing behind. This was not unusual. A refueling wing flew out of Nellis AFB, and we'd see one fly overhead about once a week, often refueling F-15s headed for Dugway. As I was watching, one of the contrails from the smaller jets suddenly cut out, and I could see the aircraft glint in the sunlight as it tumbled from the sky. I did not see the crash itself. The falling plane disappeared behind a distant mountain. I assume it crashed far to the south, somewhere in the test range. There was no notice in the media. Number 11. One time, my mom woke me up to tell me dad died. Then I woke up again, assuming that I just dreamed that. This time I got out of the bed to the bathroom, in the way my mom told me one of my cousins died. I woke up again to my mom telling me that grandma died, without me moving it out of the bed. Finally I woke up for real and was so effing disoriented I had to go find my mother and ask if any of that shit happened. Nothing that dreamed happened, but was really weird and scary. Like an Inception but in horror. Number 12. I'm not sure if this counts, but when I was a freshman in high school we traveled all over for my dad's job. One year we were on our way back home and stopped overnight, and I woke up multiple times throughout the night feeling weird. Then I suddenly woke up and had the strangest urge to look out the window. The only window, of course, was in the bedroom part of the hotel room we were in, and that's where my parents were sleeping. I remember getting up and standing at their door for 15 minutes fighting with myself to go lay back down and forget it. I finally laid her down and convinced myself that I was okay. Then the next morning we found out our trailer was stolen with all our personal belongings, social security cards, savings, etc. gone. And the time frame on the surveillance video was the same time I was awake and decided to look or not. Not only that, but they circled the car multiple times apparently, and each time I was awake. I listen to that eerie feeling now because it always tells the truth. I've known we'd get in car crashes, screwed over or injured minutes before it happened. Now people actually listen when I say I feel weird about a situation or person. Number 13. I was sick one day and bad shit started happening. First some roof bits of my apartment fell off in the morning, then my car got wrecked by a truck. And I swear I saw this bald man just blankly staring at me at the scene of the accident, which I avoided as I was not in the car, buying more medicine. I was like nope and just spent the day indoors. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.